All right, golfers, I want to film a video here for everybody regarding early extension in the downswing. So the premature loss of posture, right? Some people call this, goat humping is a famous term that people use in the golf industry, where the butt comes off this imaginary wall, the pelvis kicks forward, and the golfer obviously stands up really aggressively. They have to extend their arms to make contact with the ball, a lot of flipping and so on. It's probably the question I get asked the most often in my messages is why am I losing my posture? I'm working really hard on trying to keep my butt back, and I either come off the wall anyways, or when I do keep my butt back, I hit it poorly. So the number one drill I see all over the internet is, people will take a golf bag, a bag stand, a chair such as this. They set up with their glutes onto the chair, and then they're trying to keep their glutes attached to it in the downswing. But a lot of times you'll see golfers still do a lot of this, right? So the pressure moves that really aggressively out onto the toes of their feet. You can see the pelvis is kicking really aggressively forward. My spine, instead of staying in posture through the golf ball, is really extending up vertically and coming out of it. And obviously, when that happens, what you'll see more often than not is that the pelvis is going to separate from this chair and push forward. Well, that drill, unfortunately, is to no benefit for a large majority of you. Very rarely in the golf swing do things happen in isolation. Very rarely will you see an issue in the golf swing and immediately pick apart that issue and say, hey, that's 100% what I have to work on. Because the reality is, your body is smarter than we give it credit for. And this is the case for everybody. And what ends up happening is you have a certain intent in your mind. So what that means is, my intent right now is to hit the middle of my screen. I mean, that's pretty much my target, right? Well, if there is a variable in my golf swing that's going to be out of position, my body is going to do everything in its power to get that variable back into position. And a lot of times, unfortunately, this comes at the cost of your posture. And so if I'm standing here and I'm trying to hit this ball to the middle of the screen, and the number one thing that I see with golfers who early extend is a shaft angle coming down that is extremely upright. So too steep, too vertical, whatever term you want to use, right? So the golfer is coming down with the shaft angle very steep. Well, if I try to stay in my posture and turn here, I'm going to kick this club head to the wrong side of the golf ball, to the wrong side of my hands. Some people in the modern day world call that over the top, right? So the shaft alignments come down way too upright. And if I try to stay in my posture and turn, I am simply going to cut across this golf ball. Now, if my face angle is closed, I'm going to hit a straight pull. Typically starts very low, starts way left for a right-handed player like myself, never comes back. Or what ends up happening is the face angle is open relative to that, and it's pretty much the same path, same shaft movement. You just see a big curvature to the right for the right-hander. Well, that obviously doesn't work, right? So trying to stay in posture when the shaft angle is that steep coming down simply does not work. So when you're seeing early extension take place late in the downswing, this is not an issue that you need to correct right away. In fact, this is actually a movement that your body is attempting to do to give you a chance of succeeding with your golf swing. What that means is that is a compensation that shouldn't be seen in a negative light. It's something that you're doing to actually give you a chance of hitting your target because you have an intent of where you're trying to send the golf ball. And so let me recreate that same downswing position here. The shaft alignment's being very steep. Now, at this point in the downswing right now, I'm currently still in my posture, right? I'm still in my forward bend. My ass is to the wall. They call that anterior pelvic tilt. So I'm kicking the asswards back, right? I'm in a good posture position here, but my shaft is clearly out of place. It's not going to necessarily allow me to retain my posture because I'm going to get steep on it like I just kind of showed you in the first scenario. So what ends up happening oftentimes from here is the body says, well, damn, I can't hit my target if the shaft is like this and I try turning. So what your body instinctively starts to do is it kicks the pelvis forward and it early extends the spine. Look what's going to happen to the shaft if I retain the exact same relationship between the shaft angle and my spine, okay? So my spine is in forward bend, the shaft is upright. Well, if now I kick my spine more upright and I early extend my posture and my butt comes off the wall, what you're going to see is the club head is going to start to drop back behind me. Well, guess what that's going to do? That is going to allow me to swing a little more from the inside, right? So all else equal, if everything else remains the same in my golf swing, but the shaft comes down very steep and my spine really early extends and my butt comes off the wall, I am going to drop this club to the inside when I do that, right? So that early extension to your spine, although you dislike it and you very much are trying to get rid of it through all these drills like having your butt to a wall, well, that'll never work because your body literally has no choice but to early extend in order to correct the shaft angle that is out of position. And so, in order for you to be able to stop early extending, which is certainly something we would want to do long term for a large majority of you, well, you need to first get the shaft into position so that there's no longer a necessity for you to have to early extend. At this present moment, when the shaft comes down too steep, there is literally no other choice for you to try to drop this club to the inside than to early extend the spine and kick the butt off the wall, because that shallows the club, allows you to swing from the inside. Granted, it's still going to create all sorts of other problems in other areas, but it does correct the shaft issue. That is your shallowing mechanism. And so if you want to be able to retain your posture and not do that crazy amount of early extension at the bottom, well, you need to first realign the shaft by figuring out why it's steep, obviously. You need to realign the shaft into a more shallow spot. Now, all of a sudden, well, there's no longer a need to early extend, because if your shaft is already in a shallow position and you still early extend, now you're actually going to be underneath the plane, the complete other problem, and now you're swinging too far from the inside. But if you shallow the club, well, guess what? Now all of a sudden this golfer can actually rotate and still hit it relatively towards their target. There's no longer going to be those low pulls and high slices. Your path will still be somewhat neutral, and it gives you a chance of hitting your intended target. So when you're looking at early extension, don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. See it as something that is currently required in your golf swing. Now, keep in mind, I want to mention one last thing here. The shaft angle coming down steep is really only one reason why golfers early extend. It is probably the most common one based on my experience coaching. It's not the only one. Some golfers tend to set up with their glutes way too much already pushed back, right? Stick your ass out is a common term we hear. I actually dislike that very much. It kicks the pelvis way too much in anterior tilt to begin with. So your ass is actually way too far back. The only option when your ass is that far back is to then at some point release it and push it forward. There's nowhere else for the glutes to go and for the pelvis to go, right? So that would be another common issue. But keep in mind, if you are early extending, don't look at it automatically as an isolated bad movement. Be aware that it's very likely in an effort to try to correct an issue that lies somewhere else. And more often than not, it's the shaft angle coming down too upright and the body's early extending as a shallowing mechanism to drop the club to the inside. So just be aware of this when you go about trying to correct it with some sort of chair or object behind you, okay?